I don't want this video to make you think I'm coming for women or men. I'm coming for both of us, okay? If you don't agree, just mind your business. Even when you're watching porn, that's an exchange. You are creating an emotional bond, which is why you can't let it go. That's why you're addicted to it. Just let loose. They don't like prudes. They don't like stuck-up women. It's not that serious. It is that serious, okay? It's that serious. And I know hookup culture, of course, we're free to sleep with whoever we want to, but just because we have free will doesn't mean that we should do it. You don't have to have sex to be battling with lust. Basically, it's a lot easier to fight lust when your eyes are on God and not on these dudes. For every single physical issue that we see in our society, there's a spiritual reason behind it. The root of the problem is lust. I really hope this reaches the right target audience. Is this too much information? What's good, y'all? Welcome to the 31st episode of the JRNE Podcast with your girl, Jada Christine. I really put a lot of effort into the ambiance in this video, and I hope it turns out good, because I know the last episode, the mic was like way over here. You couldn't even hear me that well. The camera lighting was okay, but I wanted it to look better, so I really tried this episode, okay? In today's episode, we are going to mainly be talking about lust, sex, porn, hookup culture, and most importantly, the stain that leaves on our hearts, ultimately on our generation, on our society. I should give a trigger warning. If it would make you uncomfortable to hear a conversation about this, about assault, about porn, if you aren't prepared to have this conversation, just click away. Catch me in the next episode. But I also want to say your girl's a little immature and I laugh at everything. Very inexperienced, very goofy in general. So if I laugh, don't laugh at me, okay? That's just the way I am. This is a very serious conversation though, so of course I'm going to be serious. I can't get serious, but don't laugh at me if I laugh, okay? I'm a little mature. So essentially, there's a problem. There's a problem that most people don't even identify as a problem, and it's plaguing our generation. Yet we've become desensitized to it. That's how the enemy works. He desensitizes us to a lot of things over time. Sin has become normalized in a lot of different areas. I think we can all agree on that. He'll expose us to things for so long that they become our normal. But it's not normal, and it actually causes damage to our hearts, damage to our spirits. And what we're talking about here today is lust. It distorts love, it's fueled by pleasure, and it's greedy. We live in a generation that sexualizes everything. A generation of women are growing up believing that in order to be beautiful, they have to have a big butt and big boobs, and that if they don't have them, that they should go buy them. A generation of young men and women who start watching porn at the age of 11, and it leaves a stain on their heart forever. 22% of online porn consumption comes from children under the age of 10. A generation of men are raised believing that women have no more value than what's between their legs, so much so that they don't know how to love women properly, or even have a full conversation before they bring up the subject of sex. And so much so that they have more love for their homeboys because they actually get to know them and love them and build emotional connections with them. But women just become toys that they play with and throw away to show off to their homeboys. A lot of men don't even like women. They just like what they can give them and that they can show them off. But that's for another time. Storytime, actually. My uncle runs a summer camp for young black kids, and I went one year and we did an exercise. Looking back on this time I spent at this summer camp, it really shows me the damage that lust can cause in our hearts and in our spirits. So first we did an exercise where the boys and the girls were split up into two groups. We went into two different rooms and there was a big whiteboard in each room. So our job was to write names that we call the men and names that men call the women. So in my group, the girls group, we wrote things like king, my man, my boob, my love. There was the N-word, and there was a few negative ones. Like, I can't say a lot of them because they got cuss words in them, okay? Let's keep it PG. At the end of writing the names on the board, we were to switch rooms and look at the board and see what the boys said about us, and so that the guys can see what we said about them. We go into that room and we look at the board and my jaw dropped. Everybody's jaw dropped. There was a distinct difference between our board and their board. The men's board had so much negative, vulgar language about women, while ours was mostly positive. There were a few queen, wifey. There was a few of those, but most of them was hoe, slut, the B word. One of them even said pocket. Okay, That right there on its own is dysfunctional. The reason it's dysfunctional is because it shows that our world is driven by lust, meaning everyone is thinking with what's between their legs when it comes to how we interact with each other instead of with love, with patience, with kindness, with goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. I'd love to go into the lack of respect men have for women and how everyone cheats on each other, hookup culture and all that, but there's plenty of podcasts about that. That's not what this podcast is about. It's about God. And I will touch on those subjects because it's necessary, but I want to emphasize the root of that problem. The root of the hookup culture, the root of the lack of respect, the root of the porn addictions, the root of all of that. We desperately have to understand that there is a spiritual realm. And for every single physical issue that we see in our society, there's a spiritual reason behind it. There's a driving force behind it. And when it comes to this situation, when it comes to hookup culture, when it comes to over-sexualization, when it comes to porn addictions, when it comes to all of that, the root of the problem is lust. I see these conversations taking place on podcasts where women and men will sit and argue about how there's a lack of respect for each other, yet no one is bringing up the fact that the real issue is lust. And honestly, I feel the need to bring this up because y'all know how in the last episode, if you watched the last episode, I mentioned that I was gonna start dating again. I was gonna attempt to try to date again. Let me just update y'all. I quit. I was already thinking about talking about this, but that experience was honestly beneficial for this video, for this episode. I honestly shouldn't have even dipped my toe in the dating pool in the first place because I allowed fear to rush me. I've been allowing fear to move me to do a lot of things lately, but let's not talk about that. Let me focus on that in my quiet time with God. But we are set apart in everything we do, right? That includes dating. As I'm texting some of these guys, there's a huge disconnect, which was expected, but I can be stubborn, so I had to see for myself. But dating culture in the world these days tells us sleep together now, ask questions later. Become blinded by lust first and deal with emotional issues later. Become spiritually connected to this person by becoming one flesh with them and having sex, then run and do it with someone else. In the Bible, getting married was sleeping together. In the eyes of God, sex is getting married, and they didn't have weddings back then. It takes place to create a bond between that couple that will keep them together. Hookup culture perverts that. So when we as believers step into places that we are supposed to be set apart from, as a Christian, you're not going to find your man in the club, and a lot of times you're not going to find him on Tinder. Most of the times you're not going to find him on Hinge. I tried Hinge, y'all. Even Hinge, even though it's the relationship app, okay, just chill off that. But the world will always do things a different way, a way that doesn't reflect God's order. And it's going to go against that order, and it's going to go against what you want, and it's never going to work. I can't say never, but most of the time it doesn't work. Hookup culture perverts the purpose of sex. And as I was writing this script, I was looking up verses for lust, and I came upon this Psalm of David, Psalms 101:3. It says, I will not look with approval on anything that is vile. I hate what faithless people do. I will have no part in it. The perverse of heart shall be far from me. I will have nothing to do with what is evil. So I had to be real with myself. I chose to walk into a secular dating space and expected godly results from it, which didn't happen. Now, when we are walking with God, what does he tell us about dating? Don't awaken love until the time is right. That's in the Song of Solomon. I don't remember what verse it is, but I know it's the Song of Solomon. There's a big reason for this. If you get out of step with God's timing, especially when it comes to this, you're going to be battling with things that you are not ready for. And I'm going to be so for real with y'all. There's a reason Paul said, run from lust, flee. 1 Corinthians 6:18, run from sexual sin. No other sin so clearly affects the body as this one does. For sexual immorality is a sin against your own body. It's like a fire the way it spreads. Fire catches quickly, and you got to put it out before it consumes whatever is before it, and that's exactly what lust does. If you are dating in the wrong season, your mind is going to be concerned with intimate things when you aren't ready. As I was talking to these men, or whatever you want to call it, dating or whatever, I awakened love for the wrong people. And no, I'm not saying I didn't fall in love with these dudes over the course of a few days. I didn't fall in love with nobody. I'm simply talking about romantic interest in general. The issue with that is I was now burdening myself with the battle that wasn't in its time. There's no reason I should be battling lust because I'm thinking of a guy that isn't even for me. And when I say battling lust, I mean, basically, it's a lot easier to fight lust when your eyes are on God and not on these dudes. Now, I know that when I get into a relationship, of course, or start courting someone or whatever, waiting until marriage is going to be 20 times harder. It's expected. When you love somebody, when you're attracted to someone, especially the one you want to be with for the rest of your life, you're going to want to sleep with them. point blank period, but we're not meant to go through that battle a million times with a bunch of different people. That's like having a reservation for dinner set at 8 o'clock at a restaurant, and then you show up at 7 a.m. and you sitting in there hungry. You sitting in that restaurant for 11 hours, smelling the chef cooking up all the meals, watching the waiters bring the food to everybody else. You didn't eat all day. You concerned with what's on their plate. You hear people smacking on their meals, and you just sitting there hungry, and it's not your time yet. And then when it finally gets to 8 o'clock, you got to look at the menu and wait on the food to come, and now you're weak because you didn't eat all day. You were hungry, you chose to sit in there and watch everybody else eat, so now you're weak because you started fighting the temptation too soon, so you can't wait. And you go to the gas station for something to hold you over while you wait for your food, and it's, of course, it don't hit as much. It's the same thing with dating. We're out here dating and it's not the right time. You're showing up too early for your reservation. It isn't ready yet. So you're sitting there horny, looking at how fine he is, how fine she is, looking at that couple on your For You page, and he got this and she got that, and it's not your time. So by the time your man comes, you're weak. But he was prepared at the right time, so he's ready. And now you're so weak that you just can't wait anymore. And that's a tougher battle because you actually love him. So when you see him, all you want to do is put it on him. But you can't. And you dang near got to keep 50 feet from him because y'all got different boundaries now because you can wake in love before the time was right. I did get something out of that experience, though. I learned something about how lust affects us. So pre-Jesus, I was addicted to pornography, and I didn't understand why it was bad for us. So I let it go, but I still toiled with the thought of, God, why is this bad for me? And it's the same thing with other things. Like the things I let go for the longest time, I wanted to understand why I couldn't do it. Like when I stopped smoking, I was like, God, why is smoking bad? When I stopped partying, I was like, why is partying bad? And that was the worst one, actually. So I was like, God, why can't I just do it? Like, I'm still a virgin. I'm waiting till marriage. Why can't I just, I was like, why can't I just do it? I was asking those questions because sexual frustration is a different type of frustration. It is, and I'm telling you, it's like a fire. I know you understand. We're human beings. But anyways, what I know now is that pornography leaves a big old lustful stain on our hearts, and it left a lustful stain on my heart. And what I'm grateful for is the fact that I never gave myself to anyone. I was grateful to have a million sisters and grown women who told me that they all regretted losing their virginity. But the thing is, you don't have to have sex to be battling with lust. The stain that porn left on me caused me to over-sexualize myself at a young age by taking inappropriate pictures of myself, and it caused me to look at others differently and over-sexualize others, both men and women. The stain that lust and porn left on my heart caused me to always have lustful things in my mind because of what I was letting in my eyes. But when I came to Christ, I saw that I didn't like my thoughts anymore. I didn't like the fact that I couldn't look at a man that I was attracted to without imagining what being intimate with him would be like. I'm just not realizing how vulnerable this conversation is and how real this conversation is. I feel like I'm exposing myself. But it must be said, my fantasies, my imagination wasn't godly. It wasn't godly at all. I didn't even like the fact that I couldn't go to sleep without creating scenarios with the guy in my mind because of the fact that I spent years of watching porn before I went to bed every single night. Oh my gosh. Am I too real? Am I being too real on this podcast? Is this too much information? Anyways. There's a reason why 1 in 6 American women have been sexually assaulted or been a victim of an attempt of an assault. Lust is dominating minds and there's no self-control. There's no reason almost every woman I know has a story about being a victim or almost being a victim. Lust causes people to do things that hurt others and it's driven by physical pleasure. So when you are so concerned with your own pleasure and how you're going to relieve yourself of that pleasure, you do the unthinkable, which is where hookup culture comes in, where high abortion rates come in, STDs come in, where sexual assault comes in, and where love dies. And it becomes a morality issue. And so with hookup culture being so normalized, we don't see it as a morality issue. We don't see it like, oh, that's immoral, that's wrong. We see, oh, this is just our normal. That's not normal. It's wrong. Some of us don't see abortion as wrong. It's wrong. There was a point in time where slavery was legal. Did that make it okay? No. There's a point in time where if you were to sexually assault your wife, it was legal. Did that make it okay? No. Today, abortion is legal in states. Does that make it okay? And I don't want to ruffle any feathers, okay? But still. And I know hookup culture, of course, we're free to sleep with whoever we want to, but just because something is okay, just because we have the ability and just because we have free will doesn't mean that we should do it. Our generation doesn't understand love. And maybe I'm just talking to the wrong guys, but a place where no love is a place where I don't want to be. And it all starts with what we allow into our eye gates. Matthew 5:28 says that anyone who even looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. So you're looking at these dudes the wrong way, and essentially you cheating on your future husband. And if we go back to the last episode where we were talking about what we allow into our eye gates, Luke 11:34-36 says, your eye is like a lamp that provides light for your body. When your eye is healthy, your whole body is filled with light. But when it is unhealthy, your body is filled with darkness. Make sure that the light that you think you have is not actually darkness. If you are filled with light with no dark corners, then your whole life will be radiant as though a floodlight were filling you with light. In that episode, we go deep into media, but I want to take a close look at the damage porn has done to our society. And now when we think porn, the first thing that comes to mind is probably the websites that have adult films with porn stars and weird titles that sexualize the relationships between mothers and sons and fathers and daughters, etc. But we've become so desensitized to pornography that we can't identify the way porn has been introduced to us since our early adolescence. Over time, things like modesty, music, and movies have developed in such a way that it's normal to see someone butt naked on the timeline. Like, that might not really faze us. At one point in time, it was shameful to show your ankles. Then it was shameful to wear tight clothing. Then it was shameful to show cleavage. Then it was shameful to wear sheer clothing. However, now we have men who post selfies or videos with their junk out like we can't see it, intentionally poking through their sweatpants to show off their sexuality or the sensuality. We have women who post nudes and are praised for body positivity and empowerment. I don't want this video to make you think I'm coming for women or men. I'm coming for both of us, okay? Women and men can deal with lust. Women and men can deal with the porn addiction. Women and men can have issues with sexual immorality. And I think it's weird that women are shamed for sexual immorality more than men. Women can have a billion bodies, a man can have a billion bodies, but the man is going to get praised for it while the woman is going to get defeated for it. However, it's wrong in both cases. I know you probably thought I was going to say, yeah, everybody can be a HO. No, I really hope this reaches the right target audience. I really do. I feel like in no case is it acceptable for a man or a woman to have given themselves to so many people, to have shared such an intimate moment with so many people, or to have even sexualized themselves or damaged their relationship with sex through porn. Back to what I was saying about how we become desensitized to lust. With our music today, there's no innocence anymore. Music gets so explicit with the details of sex, which is meant to be sacred between a husband and wife, that we've fed our minds to constantly think this way. My parents may play like an oldie song, like a romantic song, which would have been a slow jam back in the day. And my mom might say, oh, I shouldn't be playing this around you guys. And I'm listening to it like, oh no, this is just, what are we talking about? This is just like, this is a normal song. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is inappropriate about it? Meanwhile, they're talking about bumping and grinding or whatever. Yeah, in the back in the day, like, oh, that's bad, that's bad. But with the music today, you have to understand there's no boundaries, okay? The details be too detailed. I listen to it like this is nothing because of how overly sexualized things are today. In movies, a sex scene used to be insinuated or suggested. You'll maybe have a kissing scene with a fadeaway and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, they probably had sex. But now we have full-on porn in the movies that make me wonder, is this acting or were they actually having sex? Now, I can only speak on how this has affected me, but I know I'm not alone in this. I think my first idea of what sex was introduced to me in elementary school. 6th grade to be exact. Should a 6th grader be concerned with sex? Definitely not. I had a friend who did a hand motion or something. We were on the playground and she was doing something with her hands. And asked her what it meant and she was like telling me, oh, it's sex. Like, this is what happens, this goes in there. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I was also in a class with a bunch of immature boys who must have been introduced to porn at that age, also randomly moaning in class. And yes, it's weird, but that actually happened. At some point, I put 2 and 2 together, and I didn't watch porn until my sophomore year of high school. I saw a group of guys in my chemistry class playing porn on their phones several times in class, like all huddled up together, just watching porn. And so I was curious about it. It became a fantasy for me as a virgin who had different infatuations with guys, and I thought it was normal. And I thought it was normal because of how normalized it was, of course. Like in our music, in our culture, in the movies, watching TV shows about high school students who are sleeping with each other, having friends around me who are sleeping with each other. And yes, I had been introduced to the fact that sex is sacred and you should wait till marriage. And in my head, I was like, I'll wait till I'm in love. I'll wait till my first relationship. So I wasn't, out there like, oh, okay, no, sex is cool. I want to just have sex with anybody. I still had some set of morals, but I didn't think it was wrong to explore with yourself because I was taught by the media, I remember there was a specific podcast I heard about Jada Pinkett Smith teaching her daughter or showing her daughter Willow Smith about how to masturbate and what to use and what to look at and stuff. And she was talking about how that was normal in their family, that it shouldn't be a taboo subject. I feel like it shouldn't be a taboo subject, but I also don't think you should be teaching your children how to play with themselves. Of course, that only applies to believers. If you're not a Christian, then you're going to have different set of morals. That's just public, period. If you don't agree, you don't agree. This video is for believers. Like, there's a set of rules we follow. If you don't agree, just mind your business. But it was normal. So I thought it was normal. I thought it was okay. I was like, this is not even normal, but it's okay. It's necessary. It's needed, because I was like, well, yeah, I should know this about myself. But then it quickly became an addiction. And then I started sexualizing myself in private. This leaves a stain on one's heart. And if you're watching porn every day, you're thinking about when you're going to watch porn every day. Then you're thinking about what kind you're going to watch every day. Then you have these wildly inappropriate ones. I already talked about this. When you see adults with children, parental figures with young family members, a woman being passed around by multiple men, the unrealistic portrayals of what sex really is and what it looks like. And it distorts your thinking. It distorts your perception of sex. And so now you're left with habits that society encourages, because we have a bunch of people who are addicted to porn behind closed doors, but not seeing a problem with it and sweeping it under the rug. We've become each other's accomplices at this point. That's how normalized it is, that we are encouraging our homeboys to go sleep with every girl on the planet, that we are encouraging our girls, our homegirls, oh yeah, girl, just have fun, just let loose. They don't like prudes. They don't like stuck up women. Just let loose. It's not that serious. It is that serious. Okay? It is. Okay, it's that serious. Now these habits are sexualized language, sexualizing normal objects, sexualizing innocent children, dirty jokes, sexualizing clothing. Okay? The culture we have on social media encapsulates this. There's TikTok trends where you see these dudes humping the camera. That's weird, okay? Like, that's hella weird. If the enemy can convince us that this is normal, then he can get us to become desensitized to it. The same way he did it with violence. Now, I've become desensitized to violence, to hearing about shootings and any act of violence, when really it should grieve all of us. The problem with being desensitized to lust is that these problems lust produces will never be taken care of. They'll never go away. So women will remain insecure about their bodies. Men and women who have no self-control will continue to assault each other. Love dies and lust will grow. Abortion rates will rise, meaning less life, more death. And young children will grow up with porn addictions and repeat those cycles. And as believers, we have to set the tone for what love is and rewrite and reclaim sex. Because first of all, sex is good. Sex is a gift from God, meant for a man and a wife, and the church got society thinking Christians are anti-sex. No, definitely not. Sex was created to create a spiritual, emotional, and physical bond between a man and a wife, to create more humans and please each other in marriage, to unite a man and a wife so that they cannot be separated, which is why you have soul ties. That when you create that bond with someone, now you can't stop thinking about them, and now you're dealing with their demons, and now you're dealing with whatever spirits they fight in. You know what I'm saying? That sex is powerful. It is. It's a spiritual exchange. It's a beautiful act of intimacy that God created, but it's perverted now. The enemy perverted the hell out of sex. He flipped it every which way. Sexual immorality is a long list. It's not just sex before marriage and homosexuality. It's adultery, cheating on your man or cheating on your woman. It's polygamy. People love to say, oh, they had hundreds of wives in the Bible. Solomon had many wives. Yes, he did. And they seduced him into worshiping other gods. In the end, it's also rape, it's incest, it's masturbation, and it's other things that aren't even mentioned in the word. In Romans 1:30, the Lord said they will be inventing new ways to sin, and that's what's happening in our world today. It's wicked. But we can't rewrite the script and teach love and show love and be the example, be the reflection of God's love for the church in our marriages if we are battling with lust on our own. Again, lust burns. It's like a fire. So in order to not let it consume you, In order to not let that fire consume you, you must put it out early, when it's a baby fire, when it's a spark of lust. Because if you allow it to grow, you'll have a bigger problem on your hands. The word says in 1 Corinthians 6:18, run from sexual sin. No other sin clearly affects the body as this one does. For sexual immorality is a sin against your own body. It literally says run. That's how serious it is. But I want to focus on the fact that it says it's a sin against your own body. And before we get into that, my camera just died and I had it on the charger for a few minutes. And while I was charging, I was scrolling on my phone and I saw some news about Andrew Tate getting arrested for suspicions of human trafficking. So before I continue, let me pause and spin back to the porn industry, because what I saw on my timeline was deeply disturbing. He sent some voice memos and some messages that I refused to repeat. It was on impact, and I actually would warn against putting that into your spirit. There's some things, and this is literally goes back to what I was talking about in the last video. Be watchful of what you consume. Even the news, and I say this because the news can put fear into you. You'll see everything going wrong in the world and you'll forget that you have angels around you. You'll forget that you are protected, divinely protected. So we may be stalked by demons, but angels are fighting for us. And I had to stop reading it and listening to it at some point, and I almost watched it, listened to it again. What I saw, what I heard him say, it was violently wicked. It was disgusting. Porn is full of human trafficking. Women who are being held against their will to stay there, mentally and emotionally manipulated to stay there, or just held against their will to stay there and be filmed and be watched, or else they'll be killed. Then you have sex in porn being portrayed as a violent act. Now, rape is a kink for some. To be dealt with aggressively is a kink for some people. To be tied up, to be choked. That's not sexy. That is rooted in trauma or a deeply disturbing desire to take someone's power and dignity from them through sex for your pleasure. That's an issue. And to think about the amount of women I know in real life who have been sexually assaulted, who have almost had that encounter. There's a lot of men walking around with that lust, with that ugly desire, and it's ugly, it's disgusting, it's wicked. We talked about this in the beginning. There's a spiritual realm. There is demonic activity. There is for every evil thing we see in our society, there is a spiritual thing behind it. And just porn, there's a lot of spirits, there's a lot of demons in that industry. It's not just about pleasure. It's not just about being pleased. That is for when you get married. And I know it's hard to wait. But there are demons and there are spirits that are controlling the porn industry, that are in the porn industry, that are behind every single video. And it's caused so much harm to people in real life because of the damage that it does to people's brains and to people's spirits that will provoke them to try and rape somebody, assault somebody, that would provoke them to sleep with someone and act like it was nothing and leave them. That would provoke them to not look at women or men as people, but look at them as a tool for their pleasure. And it's hard to let go of. And so I want to be gentle. I'm not calling you disgusting. I know there was this video on TikTok I saw a while ago, this Christian creator, I'm not going to add her, but I had to block her after this one. She posted this video saying, you are disgusting if you watch porn. You are, I forgot what word she said, but you're supposed to correct people in love. And so this video was made in love. If you're dealing with any porn addiction, if you are dealing with any addiction to masturbation or addiction, any type of sexual immoral addiction, I want to encourage you. I don't want to make you feel bad about yourself. You're human. You have human desires. I have human desires. There's times where I wish that things weren't so evil. If it was up to me, some of these things wouldn't be considered evil, but that is why humans are not the judge of what is good and what is evil. Because if it was up to me, then maybe smoking wouldn't be bad for my spirit. If it was up to me, maybe having sex wouldn't be bad for my spirit. If it was up to me, partying, well, no, that's actually good for your spirit. You know what I'm saying? We're not righteous judges, God is. But I just want to encourage you, even if you don't understand why it's bad for you, if you feel God telling you to let go of something, let it go. If you are dealing with a sin issue, if you are tied up with some sin, if you are being controlled by your sinful desires, meaning when sex calls, you go. When alcohol calls, you go. When weed calls, oh yeah, you gotta go. When partying calls, hey, you gotta go. You're on a leash. You are. Being a slave to sin means that sin controls you. When it calls, you answer, you pick up every single time. That's why it says, I would rather be a slave to Christ rather than a slave to my sin. Because when you are a slave to sin, you are led to death, the death of the spirit. I just want to encourage you that Jesus came to set us free and keep us free. You can be set free. You can go cold turkey. You have power. You have a spirit of self-control. And don't say you can't, because you can. You can. I feel like I always go on this tangent about sin in every single episode, but I guess it's necessary. Yeah, it's possible. It's possible to just say no. To just say no. I'm a living testimony of that. So how long was I addicted to porn? Had to be 2-3 years at a young age. In high school, about 15, when I first started watching porn. And then I stopped watching it maybe about 3 years then. I stopped watching it at age 18 when I woke up and was convicted about everything all at once. Woke up to watch porn. God said, no, don't do that. Stop smoking, by the way, and stop watching tarot readings, by the way. Oh, and by the way, you need to stop doing this. Cold turkey, cut it off. Cut it out. That's the one thing that I was able to just not ever look back at. So it's been a long time for your girl. It's been a long time. I'm sorry. But it's possible. You can be kept free. You can remain free. So that's what I wanted to say really quick before we continue to run from sexual sin. Now, soul ties is a popular term. I talked about this earlier. It's not mentioned in the Bible though, but I think it's a great word to explain how you literally become tied to anyone you share your body with sexually. 1 Corinthians 6:15-17 says, don't you realize that your bodies are actually parts of Christ? Should a man take his body, which is a part of Christ, and join it to a prostitute? Never. And don't you realize that if a man joins himself to a prostitute, he becomes one body with her? For the scriptures say, the two are united into one, but the person who is joined to the Lord is one spirit with him. Even when you're watching porn, that's an exchange. That release, you know what release I'm talking about. That release is an exchange. You are creating an emotional bond to the porn, which is why you can't let it go. That's why you're addicted to it. Because every single time you feel that, is it a dopamine or is it, I don't know what it is, that chemical release. It's an emotional and spiritual exchange happening, which is why it's such a strong addiction, which is why it's so hard to let go, which is why, you know what, let me just do it again, let me do it again, let me do it again, you know what I'm saying? Which is also why it bonds a man and a woman in marriage so tightly, which is why it was meant for one person. And you go around having sex with others, by the time you meet your wife, you can't bond with them. Sex creates an emotional and spiritual bond. So now you have men and women who watch porn before they're married, and when they meet their spouse, they're hiding porn addictions from each other. And for some, it gets so bad that they can't even experience the real thing, the actual sex with their partner, without going and watching porn first for that spark of arousal. Boom, now you can't bond with your wife or your husband as you were designed to, and your marriage is falling apart for a lack of intimacy. But anyways, we already know the battle between the flesh and the spirit is a daily thing. Dying to yourself daily. For me, lust was and still is the toughest thing for me to die to daily, because it's literally, it's your body. It's with you every single day. Like, you can't just throw your private parts and your sexual desires out the window sometimes. Sometimes it happens. But like, you're not tempted by your outside circumstances every single day, which is why I feel like lust is the toughest thing to battle. Because if you used to smoke weed, you're going to be tempted when you see weed or smell weed. If you used to party, you're going to be tempted if you see your friends out partying. However, you can be all alone in your room in the middle of praying and you get this intrusive thought, this intrusive sexual thought, and now you're battling with lust. And it's hard. Sometimes it feels like you're literally going to erupt if you don't go and explode. But it goes back to putting that fire out as soon as you see a spark, and it takes self-control, which is a fruit of the spirit. What do we use to put out fires? We use fire extinguishers or we use water. Find out what your fire extinguisher is, find out what that water is, and how you put your fire out. For me, it has everything to do with my thoughts, since I'm a fantasizer. I find myself having to change the course of my thoughts in order for that fire to not consume me. I have to set my mind on things that are above and not on things below. The irony of that is funny. Set my mind on things above. That's actual scripture though, not on things below. But if you physically need to actually go for a run to flee from that sexual immorality, do it. Because it's not worth falling. It is more than possible to turn your back on lust and sexual immorality and never look again. Jesus came to set us free and keep us free. When you escape that bondage of lust, stay free from it. Don't go backwards, because you're just going to keep fighting and fighting and fighting. And that is why we always stay stuck on the milk of the Christianity. We never grow, as Paul was talking about, why we never grow and get to the meal. You know, babies, they sip on milk as babies because they're babies. Some of us are babies spiritually because we can't break the simple things. Like, we can't get the basics of the gospel, that Jesus came and set us free. If you believe in Jesus, you should believe that he has the power to set you free and keep you free. You should believe that he has the power to give you a way out every single time you're tempted. But that is all I have for you guys today. I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Follow the podcast on Instagram at the JRNE Podcast. Follow me on TikTok at jada.christine. I actually just made a Twitter Follow that. It's Jada Christine. The first A is an X, so JXDA Christine. You know, your girl loves to talk. I also like to type, so your girl be posting some little gems on Twitter if you want to go follow me on Twitter as well. Please come back, please spin back, come see me or listen to me again, and have a blessed day. Bye, y'all.